So here's the thing about how incredible Korra's journey is throughout the series. If you ask any Legend of Korra fan, they will likely tell you the best part of the show is the character of Korra herself. I genuinely think that she has one of the best character arcs I've ever seen in television, and that includes a lot of live-action shows. The amount of development that she goes through is comparable to Zuko, one of people's favorite character arcs from The Last Airbender, and she comes so far throughout the series, enduring trauma after trauma and persevering to become a much more thoughtful, compassionate, and understanding person by the end of the series. Many people feel that Korra is a wholly disjointed experience, largely blaming Nickelodeon, as they should, not saying they're wrong, for not renewing the show and forcing them to give most seasons a conclusive ending, and, subsequently, a different set of villains each time. However, I feel that this show, as an examination of Korra as a character, works well with these different settings, themes, and villains, and using the protagonist and their development as the through line rather than a central war is an incredibly intelligent way to write this sequel, one that's vastly different from The Last Airbender, and yes, as I've said, I personally preferred more. Korra begins her life knowing she is the Avatar from a extremely young age, having been attuned to her bending abilities naturally since birth. Quite a different upbringing than Aang, who saw himself as a normal child. Korra knew from the first moment she could form memories that she was destined to change the world and become extremely powerful. As a result, she kind of was a little terror as a child. She's adorable, but you can just tell that she was a handful to raise. I mean, Senna looks exhausted in the first episode, and Korra straight up destroys an entire wall of their home permanently. She's the only earthbender for miles. She better be putting that right back where she found it. Just look at her also absolutely washing Katara when she's trying to teach her about slow, patient movements and airbending. She struggles to control her strength, her impulses, getting overexcited by her raw power, and ends up overdoing it quite often, which we see isn't exactly cleared up by the time she makes it to Republic City. She's just so eager to be the Avatar, to fill Aang's shoes, that she ends up trying to skip some steps, wanting to simply show off her power and become the legend that Aang was. So she ignores a lot of roadblocks from the very beginning. Child Korra is a very, oh, why do we have to go inside and stop playing? It's just a tornado warning kind of kid. Not really understanding consequences, grasping the effects of their mistakes, and simply plowing forward with completely unearned confidence. It's honestly kind of adorable, I might add. However, I would like to clarify that a side people don't often recognize about Korra before all of her development is that she is naturally compassionate and capable of being incredibly caring and attentive, as we can see in the comic Friends for Life, where Korra finds Naga separated from her pack and resolves to take care of her. She's very cautious with Naga, understanding her position and why she responds with aggression at first, and eventually bonding with her enough for them to become intertwined for life. Side note, read this comic, it's free and it's adorable. I feel like oftentimes there's this perception out there in the fandom, even from those who recognize Korra's immense development, that she started out as this completely selfish, closed off, insensitive person. She does lack patience, restraint, and definitely can have severe tunnel vision with regard to her own goals and the consequences to those around her, but she still definitely has a lot of love and light inside of her and wants to make a positive difference, as well as enjoys beating guys up. There's a reason that Rava chose her after all. In fact, I think that while they start in very different places, Korra and Aang have a lot in common. I did see a lot of his traits in her. They're both fresh-faced, a bit naive, eager to learn and explore, and generally goofy and congenial around others. Also, let's not pretend that Aang was never impatient. I remember that first firebending episode where he hurt Katara, okay? They are very similar people.
I want you to stop wasting my time. I already know how to squat and breathe and feel the sun. I want to know how to shoot fire out of my fingertips.
But also due to her knowing that she's the Avatar so early, later on, when she's discovered by the White Lotus, she's taken away from her tribe and her family, and sequestered in a compound where she's forced to train alone for pretty much her entire life. I dove into the effects of this in detail, but it can't be understated how much this truly changed Korra's worldview. She was lied to sheltered away and not even allowed to visit the outside world super often. They did let her out every now and then, as we see, and I'm pretty sure she attended the spirit festivals when she was younger, but it results in her becoming rather socially stunted overall. She has trouble forming relationships, trusting others, listening to instructions, mostly because of how she was brought up. I mean, think about it. She was never even really around other children her age. She never had a model for how to interact with her peers and form long-lasting relationships. Not only this, but one of the reasons she's so jumpy and rebellious is because of the intense rules that were forced onto her from her very first day as an official avatar. It's tough for kids not to be able to just be kids because of their duty to the world, which is an insane amount of pressure to put on someone, as we saw with Aang. And when you prevent her even more harshly than he was from being around others her age, I mean, Aang was just kind of excluded from games. Korra was straight up hidden from society. Having fun, doing anything that she wants to do, she is going to grow into an extremely unsatisfied person who lashes out and feels the need to sneak behind people's backs to be able to have fun. It's one of my favorite parenting lessons, really. Helicoptering over your children is not going to prevent them from being a little bit reckless, having a wild time sometimes. The best thing you could do is not disapprove of that behavior, encourage caution and responsibility among fun activities, and trust them to be responsible, or do it where you can protect them and keep them safe. That way, it's more likely your child will actually inform you when they're planning on having a party or heading to a party, anything like that, and you'll be able to keep in contact with them and make sure they're safe far better than if you didn't trust them on their own and they snuck out without ever telling you. Take notes, parents. But due to all of this, by the time we start the series, Korra is about ready to explode in confinement. She's been there for approximately a decade of her life at this point, and she's almost mastered 3 elements and still has yet to make a single mark on the world when Aang had basically already completed his greatest journey before he was that age. So she sneaks out to Republic City, eager to make a difference, but not perhaps considering the harsh reality of the world she's about to enter. I don't think she's wrong for leaving, mind you. A lot of people fault her for it and call her some sort of brash teenager who doesn't listen to her masters or anyone, but realistically, would you stay in that compound after being there for like over a decade? I mean, Katara approved of her leaving, and she told her parents where she was going. I don't think she did really anything wrong here, and I appreciate the small defiance of the White Lotus to kind of convey how much the organization has changed and how the 100-Year War has caused an intense paranoia within them, one that they work really hard to cover up and protect their greatest asset, just in case the world falls completely apart again. But this video isn't about that. As soon as Korra makes it to Republic City, she learns that life and her role as the Avatar are not nearly as simple as they seemed. Everything is driven by money, commerce. There isn't much room for charity anymore, and not everyone is living it up, as she sees when she meets that homeless man and shares her fish, once again proving how naturally generous she is, if, you know, a bit sheltered and short-sighted. Shop owners are abused by local gangs and are forced into paying large amounts of money to simply remain safe. The people aren't free to do whatever they want like they used to be, fish or beat up bad guys without care for the nearby establishments, and that good and bad aren't as black and white as she thought. Some citizens have to do unsavory things to survive and earn money, to scrape by due to their circumstances, and those who are in power don't always use it in the most beneficial ways or actually care about the citizens they claim to protect. The best example of this being Councilman Tarlok. While Tenzin is also on the council and aims to truly help the city, Korra finds that the council itself is a consistent roadblock, and many of the members are often swayed by arguments fueled by malice and corruption and that play on fear. Many of them are simply after power, as Tarlok uses the conflict with the Equalists to propel his own career forward, mistreating non-benders and oppressing the minority in the process without really any regard for them. I mean, he does some supremely fucked up things. I mean, we're talking ice level fucked up. And at first, Korra even really trusts Tarlok because she assumed it would be so simple. He's a political figure from a water tribe who proposes to do good. From her experience, she's supposed to work with those people, and her enthusiasm to get into the battlefield only drew her closer to his side in the beginning, playing right into his hand. But it gets to a point where he directly becomes her enemy, resorts to downright kidnapping, and starts disregarding people's rights right in front of her eyes. And Korra is a generally righteous person who knows the difference between things that are moral and things that are perhaps crossing the line. He shows her brutally that not everyone that is quote-unquote on her side will actually utilize the correct and just methods to deal with conflict, nor will they actually care for those they claim to be aiding, and might even cause more pain in the process. And then her confidence is also struck down as she gets to the city, once she's humbled through both her airbending training and her initial confrontations with the chi blockers and Amon. She does pretty much destroy her first enemies upon arrival in the city, but quickly afterwards, she learns she's not going to be good at everything, as she begins her airbending training in Leaf in the Wind and participates in the Pro Bending tournament. She resolves to blaze through, conquering the airbending trials in a matter of days, possibly weeks, and becoming a fully realized avatar as soon as she can. But she immediately struggles, resolving to rely on her innate bending abilities rather than what her teachers are trying to instill into her. And this type of frustration is not something Korra previously had to deal with, as she breezed through all conflicts in front of her with relative ease, often overpowering her teachers. In this case, however, she's at step 1, and literal children are showing her up every single day. Like, there's a 5-year-old here who is able to do this.
Be the leaf!
So she lashes out at Tenzin, not really able to cope with this doubt inside of her as she's never felt it before, even destroying the Bagua Circle in a ball of fire in the process of denying that she is failing. But when she tries to go out on her own and dismiss Tenzin's help entirely, and even airbending entirely, she still struggles, and it takes this failure in such a public, pro-bending arena for her to realize that she doesn't necessarily know everything, and that being the Avatar will not simply allow her to breeze through life easily, and she does actually need to put in the work, even if it is difficult. One of her first, most crucial lessons that comes up over and over as the series goes on. This isn't the end, as you don't really learn something once and then just master it immediately. Korra is working to move past this. Plus, when she first faces actual chi blockers, she's completely caught off guard by their strength and coordination, leading to an intense fear of Amon and the Equalists that we explore in Voice in the Night. It's something that she's never really felt at all in her entire life. I mean, hell, in that story where she finds Naga, she gets lost in a winter storm, and she's not even remotely worried about it. So to deal with it, she attempts to layer it with what she's used to, strength and confidence in her bending abilities, something that has always kept her safe before, even when nobody else was around. The problem with this is that as the fear grows and grows, she needs to do more and more to overcome it, eventually challenging Amon to a duel before she is ready, and nearly losing what she holds most dear. Faced with this, she's finally able to admit to herself and to Tenzin out loud that she's been afraid, that she isn't this completely perfect god, that Aang mustn't have been one either. I find her pose with his statue this episode incredibly poignant, as she tries to align herself with that figure that the general populace sees as unbeatable to comfort herself in this frightening time. I am him, so I must be able to overcome this, and I can't be afraid of it. And as Tenzin tells her here, this is a really crucial first step in maturing into an adult, accepting that your fears are real and valid, and then moving forward to take steps to deal with and effectively handle the symptoms of that fear. That is one of the most responsible things that you can do, and is a huge step forward for Korra in her development into a more patient, calm adult. We can see that the toll this conflict, learning airbending, and the loss at the pro-bending arena have had on her psyche a great deal in When Extremes Meet, right before, you know, shit really hits the fan with the conflict with the Equalists. After Tarlok once again asserts his power over her and reminds her that she has not completed her training or even bent a single gust of air yet, her confidence takes a major blow, and she really externalizes a lot of what has been brewing for this entire season, as she has been beaten over and over. Her doubt in herself, her feeling as if she'll never work past any of these blocks, her feeling severe amounts of imposter syndrome, as if she doesn't even belong as an avatar at all. This constant loss, these rules, all of these obstacles have really ground her down, and while she has definitely made emotional progress, she still hasn't made that mark that she had always hoped to, or really done anything that she dreamed of in this big city. Her entire perception of herself has been slowly torn down, and she's feeling as if she's left with nothing but doubt, and eventually, her greatest fear comes true. Amon overpowers harms her and takes away her bending, everything that she considered made her special, made her useful. And it's only after she loses everything that she can easily fall back on those skills that were second nature to her, that she's able to let everything go and truly understand airbending. She's free of that title of the Avatar for the first time, and having never experienced true freedom before, that is why that airbending was blocked so heavily. However, once the thrill of the fight wears off, she struggles again to reckon with losing everything that she held dear. She's learned how to admit her fears, see herself as more of a human being, but without that safety net of her being a supremely powerful bender, she feels lost and afraid. It's always kept her safe. And she even feels that she won't be able to measure up as an avatar anymore. All that doubt that has been building up throughout the season reaches a fever pitch, and Korra even considers ending her own life to allow the next avatar to be born instead of living on. Truly one of the darkest moments in the series, and one that shows the depths of Korra's connection to her bending abilities throughout this first season, and how hard she's taking all of these losses. But despite this, she decides to step away from the edge. She cries as she still has to continue on and deal with this loss of this extension of herself, but she doesn't make that leap over the ledge, and she's rewarded for valuing her life, even at her lowest point, for moving past it by Aang coming to restore her bending through Rava's power. It's such a beautiful resolution to this arc, and one that I feel was definitely earned through Korra's journey in this book. I honestly love that it ends this way, and I don't think the suggestion of her just relearning the other elements works super well from a storytelling perspective. I mean, that's just my opinion. I much prefer that we move on to other things, but Korra's development carries us through. And not to mention, among all of this, Korra also struggles to make friends and discern the line between platonic and romantic relationships. Again, she had no experience in the Southern tribe interacting with those her age. So when it comes to love, things get very complicated and awkward. People really come after Korra for this time in season 1, even calling her a whore. No, I'm not joking. Or a homie hopper, I've also heard. Honestly hilarious how people will go after a 16-year-old girl like this. Whenever I see grown-ass men trying to like slut-shame Korra for dating Mako and Asami, I honestly only ever find it pathetic. Especially since Sokka is praised for how much he gets with any girl he finds in this series, which I was not really a fan of. He definitely had chemistry with Suki, but Yue, I was not feeling it. And I love that whole Northern Water Tribe storyline, but there was just nothing there for me. It was so forced. Meanwhile, Korra over here is just trying to figure out her feelings as a teenager with a circle of friends that extends to approximately 8 other people, 3 of whom are children, and another is a 40-something-year-old man. I think it's unlikely that any teenage girl in that situation would only date one member of that friend group. But she rather clumsily handles her relationship with Mako for all of these reasons, hurting Bolin's feelings and later even Asami's. After receiving advice from Pema about going after the one that you truly love, she kind of blindly follows her emotions, thinking that will result in eventual happiness, and doesn't really consider how it'll affect others or, you know, mess up the friend group, or how confused Mako himself is. However, I think people really underestimate how much Korra learned from this conflict. Over the course of the season, Korra learns to appreciate Asami, and while it hurts to see her with Mako, she still treats her as a friend, and even opens up to really trust her as the season goes on. And as we all know, as the series goes on, they build one of the strongest relationships of any member of this Team Avatar. So I really appreciated this development and how much the characters got out of it. Not to mention, she realizes fully how much she hurt Bolin and genuinely apologizes to him, caring for his emotions as a friend and showing that she does not want to leave him behind in any way, even if she's not romantically interested. Which, to be honest, they do a good job portraying. Korra really has to be convinced to go out onto an actual date with Bolin, and really only does so because she's feeling down about herself and she wants to have a good time. She says several times throughout this episode that she's really just having fun with him. I don't think she ever really saw it as anything other than hanging out with a friend. And there's a lot of instances where we can see her directly rebuff Bolin's advances, like when he talks about their compatibility for liking noodles. She's kind of just focused on, well, you know, Yeah, the noodles are great, you know. I didn't really feel any sort of her actually leading him on, which is what a lot of people say she did, but a lot of men are accusatory of that sort of behavior when it doesn't really happen. And in Skeletons in the Closet, Korra really refuses to do anything romantic with Mako, as he is still with Asami, and she realizes the consequences that flirting with him in front of everyone could have. She has learned from what happened in Spirit of Competition. It's much more responsible than the Korra who kissed him out of the blue. She is considering other people and isn't just plunging headfirst into what she wants. It's honestly really great development for her character that kind of gets ignored because it's part of the love triangle storyline that people generally don't like. And I'm not a huge fan of it either, but it does have its merits. She truly, over the course of the first book, goes from having a dysfunctional group of acquaintances to a trusted support circle, filled with those she can rely on and confide in. I really loved this Team Avatar by the end of the first book, as their bonds and relationships with Korra strengthened through their conflict with one another.
I'm the worst Avatar ever. I just feel alone.
No, that's nonsense. You're amazing.
Yeah, and remember, Aang hadn't mastered all the elements when he was battling the Fire Nation. He was just a little kid.
And he wasn't alone. He had his friends to help him. Look, the arena might be shut down, but we're still a team!
They still had some work to do on the other interpersonal relationships like Mako and Asami and Bolin, but I still enjoyed the place we ended up in, and I was happy that she was able to embrace these people as friends and overcome whatever differences she had with them. However, after this intense victory over Amon, coupled with the intense lows that she felt afterwards before getting her bending back, Korra resolves to put up that front of herself as the unbeatable Avatar more than ever. She almost lost everything, but found strength within herself. So now it has kind of boosted her confidence more than ever before, as she had never really faced real adversity before Amon. The place that she's in at the beginning of book 2 utterly fascinates me, and I think it's a great move forward from her development, to have her definitely ahead of where she was when she arrived in Republic City, but sort of sliding back into what's actually more comfortable for her, those instincts of self-reliance that had protected her, which in her mind were proved right by how she was able to take down Amon and get her bending back, as well as restore it for literally everyone else, except for, you know, Shady Shin. I get why a lot of people would see it as sort of starting over, but it doesn't really ignore the events of book 1 at all. I think it's more realistic for her to make these mistakes in the beginning of the season, trusting the wrong people, as development isn't really linear. Plus, she learned in the first books not to rely wholly on her bending abilities, but now that she has been christened a full Avatar, she has a lot more power and a significant title to reckon with. But again, like I said, development does not go in a straight line. We as humans don't just learn a lesson and then apply it perfectly for the rest of our lives. And it's not really the same lesson either. And then you add into this her discovering the extent of her father and Tenzin's lies to her over the years. That trust that was built between them in the first book was tainted by this revelation, and I think it's important for more of the audience to pay attention to how much this truly hurts Korra's relationship with Tenzin and why she chooses Unalaq as her mentor in the beginning. We already know how much Korra resented being kept as a prisoner in the South, but the only saving grace of it all was that Aang ordered it that way. Finding out that they not only decided this on their own, but they also lied about the necessity of it makes Korra feel really helpless, powerless, and as if she's not in control of any part of her life. One of the quickest ways she can obtain that control, however, of what's around her is by dictating who teaches her in the future, which is why she goes to her uncle, who, it's worth mentioning, yes, is creepy to us because he's portrayed that way on purpose. He gets the sinister music, the slow zooms, the eerie lighting, but Korra doesn't get all these hints. I mean, this is her reality. He's her uncle. He's family. And her father just admitted to lying about her entire childhood and his entire upbringing, so why would she believe him when he says things about her uncle? Meanwhile, Unalaq feeds into this perception of herself as the supreme Avatar who is all-powerful, which draws her more towards him and drives a wedge between her and her father. I understand why this part of book 2 is frustrating for some people, especially since it's clear to the audience that Unalaq has some ominous intentions, but it's so believable if you put yourself in Korra's shoes. I think they handled this decision to part with Tenzin really well and textured it enough for you to see exactly why Korra would choose Unalaq, unless, of course, you absolutely refuse to empathize with her under any circumstances. But we quickly see how fragile this state that Unalaq puts her in is, and how his face value praise ultimately sets her up for failure when she encounters real conflicts that can't be fixed by the snap of her fingers. As the Civil War progresses and Unalaq urges her to remain neutral, which is basically supporting him. I mean, if somebody is being an imperialist and you are doing nothing, you are essentially supporting the imperialist side. It drives a strict line between her and her home, where none of her own people actually trust her anymore. And as it spirals out of control, that perception that Unalaq supports of her as the perfect avatar who doesn't need any more training kind of begins to crack right before her eyes, causing intense emotional turmoil within Korra herself. And since she doesn't have her father or her family to turn to for help, no longer trusting them because of their consistent lying, and Unalaq won't help her because he asserts that she can do all of this on her own and has to, she really sinks down and starts to question everyone around her and her own abilities once again, lashing out as she loses that confidence in herself that she had just found from defeating Amon. We can see this when she even questions Mako, someone she grew to trust a great deal over the course of the first book, simply because he talked to her father. It's heartbreaking to see her so paranoid and unsure of every fundamental relationship in her life, causing her to spiral further downward since she has no one to support her or care for her, assuage those fears that are growing inside of her. And even after she realizes Unalaq's betrayal, she doesn't exactly immediately snap out of this place, as any person wouldn't. Being betrayed by someone she trusted so heavily yet again sends her even further off the edge, moving aggressively to the side of the South, and even borderline committing treason against the United Republic to try and start a war. She also blindly trusts Varric, who, despite protesting to be on the same side, is a member of the upper class and is merely trying to profit off of the war itself. And when Mako expresses the slightest qualms about her barreling forward like this, she explodes on him, kicking his desk across the room and publicly arguing with him in front of all of his coworkers. Let's not pretend that this isn't toxic. It is. But I think it's realistic that Korra, in this hyper-vigilant and paranoid state, not trusting anyone around her, feeling like she has no control or worth, would end up hurting someone close to her in this way. It's not until she runs away from Republic City, eventually losing her memories to a spirit and ending up with some fire sages, that she's able to reflect and get some perspective on her situation. Juan and the other past lives remind her who she is, what her goals are, and that she has innate worth, that every avatar has made major mistakes since the very first one, and has done things that they will regret for the rest of their lives, but still became great and momentous figures that affected positive changes later in their lives. Once again, as she's hitting her rock bottom, her past lives attempt to pull her out, especially since the threat of Vaatu and Unalaq is growing stronger every second. Afterwards, she returns to Tenzin, full of remorse and understanding, giving him a heartfelt apology and expressing how much he truly means to her, showing exactly how far she's come through these ordeals. She now knows the full gravity of the mistake that she's made opening the portal and putting her trust in Unalaq, as it now threatens to destroy the balance of the world in an insanely powerful way. This shows Korra viscerally how her decisions can often have unintended consequences, and she must be more careful and thoughtful about who she listens to, what advice she takes, and the actions she decides on. She's even able to reassure Tenzin when he begins to doubt himself, as, you know, I've also said they're very similar people too, deep down. But she still has much to learn, as we see when she journeys into the spirit world. After her and Jinora are separated, feeling alone, she struggles to contain her fear, her intense emotions. While she is able to admit that she is scared, she can't control it, and ends up lashing out at an innocent spirit after seeing many fearful ones. Although I will also add that none of them actually attack her. These spirits may look creepy, but they ain't dark. Again, different discussion, but just love throwing that in. However, once Iroh shows up and is able to guide her into the light, she learns some crucial advice that she carries with her for the rest of the series, and likely for the rest of her life.
The people who have been coming to the spirit world lately have brought darkness and anger. So that is what you see now. But you have light and peace inside of you. If you let it out, you can change the world around you.
she has to project the positive energy that she wants to see in the world. If she expects the worst, doesn't trust those around her, can't control her anger or violent tendencies, then things around her will spiral out of control. A fantastic lesson for all of us, honestly. Her acquaintances will become irritable, unsatisfied with her, and eventually won't be on her side, as Mako was when she left Republic City. It's such a huge step forward, and when Korra returns from the spirit world, even after the traumatic ordeal with Jinora, she's much more controlled and on task than before. Sure, she's got rage, but she channels it into her training, rather than lashing out at those around her. And generally, she chooses to trust those closest to her and work with them rather than behind their back. She doesn't charge in alone, she trusts the team to come up with the best plan. She's very focused, determined, and allows herself to feel things, but doesn't allow her emotions to overwhelm her or prevent her from doing what she needs to do. She puts up an insane fight against Vaatu, going into the Avatar state several times, which takes a toll on the Avatar's body, by the way, very nearly sealing him away once again. However, just before she can, Unalaq is able to get the upper hand and merge with him, eventually catching Korra off guard and removing her past lives permanently. This is one of the most massive consequences that we have ever seen in this series, and honestly probably remains to be. It's such an impressive loss, and a brave choice from the writers to help further Korra's character. She loses more than she ever thought possible, and knows that she likely will never get them back, even if she bests Unavaatu. She has to deal with one of the most crushing losses we have ever seen in this series, but Tenzin is able to remind her that the Avatar and that title is not all she is. This whole season, even after she had learned her own value beyond her bending abilities, she has been relying on that title to keep her afloat, and honestly has been doing it before this season as well. But when a major part of that identity is taken away from her, Rava literally forcibly ripped out, she's confronted with the fact that avatars become legends because of the people that they are, not simply because of Rava's spirit within them. And through this, she's able to find confidence within herself, completely separated from Rava, from everything she always considered made her powerful, bending her own energy to defeat Unavaatu and find the spirit of light again. Like Iroh told her, she projected the light she wanted to see in the world, quite literally, and in the end was able to restore balance and her faith in herself, which I found a beautiful resolution to her development this season and one of the most transformative moments of the series as a whole. And then, in an example of just how well-rounded and worldly Korra has become, she is able to even listen to some aspects of Unalaq's arguments that have merit. The human and spirit worlds were always meant to be joined, and she could guide the Earth further toward true balance without segregation of the spirits. It's a fantastic way to show how far Korra has come on this journey and how much she's matured through this very personal conflict with the Civil War and losing her Avatar spirit briefly. She respects Unalaq's beliefs even if she had to put a stop to him destroying humans' lives, and is even able to see value past all of the negative uses he took from it. So by book 3, she's already changed a great deal as a person. She's still Korra, brash, a bit impatient, and extremely confident, but definitely more thoughtful and understanding towards others. This moment in the premiere really sticks with me as a strong depiction of the new Korra that is now back in Republic City, where she extends a hand to this new airbender instead of forcefully, grabbing him and flying him down as old Korra might have done. She takes a seat next to him, relates to his issues, and shows understanding for his situation, then offers to help figure things out, much more calm, rational, and peaceful than the Korra before. And of course, she saves him when he falls too, because she's just flawless in all aspects. Just kidding, not flawless, that's like the whole point of this video. But like I said, she's not just a completely different person at this point, which I also enjoy. Some people act like her character does a 180-degree turn at the start of book 3, and that the writing is just magically better, so Korra is better. But she is still definitely abrasive as fuck, especially with President Raiko. I mean, he sucks, so it's deserved, but she still shakes his head forcefully and insults him in front of the entire press corps of the city. And even though Raiko and a lot of Republic City's poll participating population openly dislikes her, she doesn't let it stop her from doing her duty to the city, to keep coming back and attempting to solve the problem even with her failures, her very public failures. We see her trying to move past relying on the other avatars, working to simply accept the reality that she only has herself and those around her to rely on now, but that it also won't prevent her from making the differences she wishes to see. It's not going to stop her from being a great avatar. So she sets off into the world, ready to rebuild the Air Nation, her confidence in her decisions slowly returning. But she still remains grounded. It's not where we were at the beginning of Book 2. In the Earth Kingdom, she's way more patient with the Queen than we've seen with political figures before, even though she believes her to be rude, over-aggressive, and ultimately wrong about the taxes. Plus, I love that she's able to understand the will of the citizens she protected the gold from as well, knowing that though she has different aims and reasons for fighting them, they do have a strong point, and the Queen does need to be dealt with. However, even though she definitely respects authority more, she still fights for what she believes is right, driving and investigating further for the airbenders and allowing them to choose where they actually want to spend their lives. There's a great deal of consistency, along with this intense development from the past season that I think is incredibly well combined and written. But perhaps the biggest signal of her development this season comes from her decision to accept Zaheer's proposal in Enter the Void. She values the balance of the world, her duty as the Avatar so much, as well as the lives of these new airbenders, that she is willing to put her own life on the line and potentially die for all of them. It cannot be understated, the sacrifice that she made here, as it results in her being poisoned and psychologically tortured, affecting her permanently in the future. She is incredibly brave for walking into the unknown here. They don't even know what the Red Lotus wants, and her generosity has only become more evident as the seasons have gone on. During this time as a captive for the Red Lotus, she's forced to confront her greatest fears and enemies, as metal poison is forced into her blood directly through her pores, as her life as well as the entire Avatar spirit is more seriously threatened than ever before. Then, during the subsequent fight, her body is so severely hurt that she is left bound to a wheelchair without feeling in her legs. This does a great deal of damage to her mental health and leaves her largely traumatized from the experience. I mean, her worst fear, that the world won't need her, that she isn't making a difference, that she can't make a difference, and that she'll fail, is so evident in this sequence when she is seeing her past enemies, and is ingrained into her brain from that day forward, making her doubt everything that she thought she had a handle of. Which leads into Book 4, where she begins to have to reckon with the effects of that conflict with the Red Lotus. Now, I'm not a doctor, by, any means at all, but it is well stated by those who have professional experience or personal experience with post-traumatic stress disorder that Korra's journey and rehabilitation throughout Book 4 strongly resemble real-life struggles with PTSD and depression. Studies have shown that after being tortured, it can often cause psychological distress, resulting in constant intrusive thoughts relating to the experience, nightmares reminding them and forcing them to relive it, both one of the more common symptoms of PTSD itself. We see Korra struggle with this a great deal in the episode Korra Alone, perhaps one of the most important episodes for her character in the entire series. In the months after her injuries, Korra hardly sleeps, she can't eat, and her parents in general begin to actually worry for her mental health. She struggles to move forward with her life, sitting in the South and not accepting Katara's help, or trying to begin the process of rehabilitation at all. It's really heartbreaking to see her go through this clearly depressive state where she feels she has no worth, that she has failed the world, or that the world doesn't need her. Far from that Korra that we know, she feels little energy to do any activities that she usually enjoyed, and her parents really have to urge her to get help from Katara in the first place. And then she's put through the trials of physical therapy, which can be a thoroughly grueling, exhausting experience. It is often a slow, painful process containing extremely small milestones that may not seem like much in the moment. It's hard to keep perspective during this time, and Korra isn't exactly a patient person, as we are acutely aware. She's been working hard at becoming more patient, but with this extremely long, unsure process ahead of her, There's a lot of fear that she needs to face when she really just wants to be out there doing her job, being of use to people. And while she does make a ton of progress with Katara, she hits a solid wall eventually, struggling to move past the point where she is walking around and moving better, but still nowhere near where she was when we began the series. She even recaptures a bit of that innocence in a mirrored scene from her beginning training sequence, but is shot down very quickly by firebenders she bested easily in the very first episode. As a result of this frustration, she feels that she needs to connect with those who she cares for, who care about her, and rejoin her group in Republic City, see Tenzin, the airbending children again. However, once she gets to the harbor, the idea of actually being the Avatar starts to haunt her again and overwhelms her. She remembers what happened last time she got to Republic City, and this most recent trauma has only brought up everything that was boiling inside of her for so long. So, she turns away from her duty, from her friends, and doesn't confide in her parents, completely cutting herself off from all of her personal connections. Eventually, after another embarrassment and stark reminder of her intense fears, not being able to fulfill her duty as the Avatar or the world not needing her, she ends up resolving to put the title of the Avatar entirely behind her too, cutting her hair and becoming just another Earth Kingdom citizen. She exhibits avoidant behavior pretty explicitly, utilizing her distance between any sort of reminder of her past to cope with the fervent flashbacks and visions that she continues to have. This is a common coping mechanism for those with trauma to employ, and obviously incredibly understandable given the great depiction of the extent of her state of mind in Book 4, but it is important to recognize that it is not sustainable or healthy for rehabilitation. In fact, it's been found that avoidant behaviors can extend or even worsen effects of PTSD. Acceptance and commitment theory posits that the core of these illnesses often come from avoiding these thoughts or re-experiences, and that to be able to fully conquer them, you have to accept them, and instead practice mindfulness while experiencing them. So even when she is avoiding these images that cause her to remember her worst moments, she is still confronted with her fear of her role as the Avatar, reminders of what had happened to her. I do believe that the spirit of Rava externalized these fears into a physical form, representing Korra's duty as the Avatar, as the fight between poisoned Korra and real Korra is much too real to just be in her mind, but it is definitely a result of her refusing to embrace her fears, admit what is so scary about her duty to the world now, and choosing not to move forward. The chain that connects the two of them is a great representation of the fact that she just can't leave her past behind. She can't abandon it and expect that to help her improve, help her get back to where she was. She needs to face it, and it's not until another spirit leads her to the swamp that she is actually able to do so. Though she tries to run away, she falls directly into the poison, sinking fully into it and thus reaching the help she needed so badly in Toph Beifong. All in all, an episode of incredible symbolism. By the way, I might add, this tiny spirit is extremely wise and super clever, taking a different form as the dog to lure Korra there. It's so fun to see her attachment to the spirit world be so useful and physically guide her to where she needs to be. This was a very mystical, spiritual episode, and one that I think, even though it is definitely praised, deserves even more of it. And Toph, once there, is able to help Korra realize exactly why her body is reacting the way it is to any form of treatment. Why she is finding it more difficult than ever to train, to regain her old steps. She's afraid of returning to her job. She is the one who realigns Korra's vision, informing her that she's been avoiding far too much. That experience with the Red Lotus twisted her perspective so fiercely that she, at least in the back of her mind, no longer has that enthusiasm, that fire to get back into her role as the Avatar. And eventually Korra, after reconnecting with some of her roots and receiving love from those she cares for, the airbending children, is able to steel herself, rely on that support, to realize that fear of being the Avatar and understand it, as well as how much she's learned from the villains themselves, then move forward. As Tenzin taught her earlier, once you can admit that you are afraid, you are able to take steps in the right direction. And then she is able to bend the remaining metal out of her own body, a fantastic symbol of how far she's come in accepting rehabilitation, acknowledging her own fears, and overcoming them in a feat of tremendous bending ability. I think it's a great message that she's not simply ready to be treated, but that she does it herself. Focus on mindfulness and having control over your own body, that is so important within rehabilitation, is really a really great representation through this scene where someone bends metal poison out of their skin. Like, how does no one talk about how great this moment is? It's everything. However, one thing I will note that is also realistic and well written is that Korra comes out of this feeling as if she's cured, that there isn't any work left to be done, which is an incredibly realistic depiction of mental health recovery, or really in general just developing as a person, any sort of recovery. You're never really done. Korra wants to be able to move forward, feeling as if she's now done what she needs to put it behind her, while still not fully accepting what has happened to her and how much things have changed. She expects to be the old Korra once again. But also, due to all this work and the intense turmoil throughout the several years where she had to practice the most amount of patience and self-reflection that she ever has before, when she returns to deal with Kuvira, she doesn't immediately want to fight her and obliterate her army. I find it so hilarious. When people get annoyed at her for this, like, great, so when she goes in swinging, she's annoying, but when she tries to pacify and reach a truce, she's also annoying? Sorry, folks, it just doesn't add up. However, when she does have to fight her, because Kuvira obviously is going to take it too far, Korra discovers that she's still not necessarily ready to return to action just yet, and is surprised that she's still not in a great place, even if the metal is now outside of her body. The externalized, poisoned Korra still looks up at her, reminding her of her failures, threatening her with the notion that she is not necessary anymore, that Kuvira has taken her place, reminds her of her failures, and tries to dissuade her from being able to complete her job, in this instance, throwing a giant rock at Kuvira. Additionally, when she's fighting out of the Avatar state, she's still rather apprehensive. She's gotten the metal out and began her path of recovery, but clearly still has a long way to go. And eventually, when she tries to meditate into the spirit world, as a spiritual threat grows in Republic City, she finds that the memories of her near-death experience still haunt her, to the point of her not being able to reach the emotional clarity necessary to enter the spirit world at all, instead being faced with a vision of what Zaheer did to her yet again. So, Korra resolves to face Zaheer in his prison, from her perspective, to be able to assert dominance and strength over him, and help herself feel more like she did when she first faced him, aka the type of behavior that she's used to comforting her. In this extremely unsure place, she hopes to be able to return to what she knows, for some sort of comfort when everything is still unsure, even after she thought it was completely solved. Instead, however, Zaheer shows her that she still has intense fear toward him, and a ways to go on her path of recovery. You see, she still harbors an intense amount of blame toward him for the state that she's currently in, and while yes, it is definitely his fault because, you know, he hurt her, the blame and shifting of responsibility hinders her own recovery as she refuses to look at what she could be doing to prevent herself from entering the spirit world, connecting with her spiritual self, and eventually recovering fully. After all, her life is just different now. There is nothing she can do to change that, and blaming Zaheer especially will not help. Despite everything they've been through though, Zaheer resolves to help her through this block to stop Kuvira, a dictator. He's able to lead her fully through this memory that she has kept cutting off every time it played throughout this season. Instead of trying to refuse or shrug it off because she fears the way it ends, she accepts it, and that is what allows her to move forward into the spirit world and reconnect with Rava. I specifically love his line, "Don't fear what might have been." Korra has been so focused on this idea that she's been ruined by Zaheer, violated, and turned into something ultimately weaker than before. But here, she's able to accept herself how she is and realize the strength that's still within her, that has been there this entire time. Rava states herself that she's always been with Korra. She only needed to connect with her again. Such a gorgeous message about acceptance and its importance in rehabilitation, specifically for those with PTSD. Like Korra says to Mako, she's never going to forget what happened. She will never be the same person that she was before this ordeal, but she is able to accept that it did happen, and that is going to make her stronger. It's clear that the writers did their research, and they also presented it in a way that is more easily understood by a younger audience, as well as connected it to the main themes of the Avatar universe incredibly well. It really doesn't get better than that, writing-wise. But through this, she's able to free the spirits and more effectively turn to deal with Kuvira, who grows in general malice by attacking the environment and the spirit world directly. But in the end, even after every awful thing Kuvira has done, Korra is able to do one of the most difficult things a hero can do: see their opponent as a human being. It's so easy for us to define people as monsters, as the enemy, so that we can simply wish for their ultimate misery or demise without really contemplating the actual psychological effects or lack of effect of those punishments. But when Korra sees Kuvira about to be killed, even though it is the direct consequences of all of her own choices throughout Book 4, Korra still steps in front of her to save her, not even knowing that she could. She's never been spirit energy before. How would she know that she was able to do that? Again, so many people fault Korra for saving her, viewing this so shallowly. Kuvira is bad, and therefore she should die, but this is the strongest signal thus far that Korra has grown as a person and is so important to the overall entire plot of The Legend of Korra. To be able to extend empathy to someone who has been so reprehensible, probably one of the most unlikable villains thus far, be able to connect with them and convince them to stand down peacefully is honestly nothing short of remarkable. Aang would be so proud. It's what he always wanted to do with Ozai in the end. She didn't even have to take Kuvira's bending. She just surrendered after Korra showed compassion and proved her strength, recognizing Kuvira's need to feel in control and comparing it to her own journey throughout the season. But honestly, the show as a whole, and eventually helped Kuvira understand the gravity of what she's done to the Earth Kingdom. Which, you know, isn't it better for Kuvira to live and understand what she's done? You know, to actually reckon with the consequences and fully grasp them? Wouldn't that be a better outcome than just getting blasted by a spirit ray? I mean, in Ruins of the Empire, she's even able to be of immense aid to Team Avatar, helping to dismantle what remains of the Earth Empire and definitively making progress as a person, accepting her punishment after she at first is angry about it. The message here isn't that Kuvira deserves to be forgiven for everything she did. I mean, again, she did some pretty awful stuff, concentration camps and the like. But every human deserves proper justice and treatment, and no one is simply just broken beyond repair or evil for no reason. We're all humans, no matter what. Stop drawing lines everywhere, people. Seriously. Oh, I actually think people who commit this specific crime are entitled to— Nope! Justice for all. I mean, come on, folks. But this is such a poignant way to end Korra's arc, with her not defeating or killing a villain, but instead saving their life, and that being what solves the ultimate conflict. She demonstrated her own power without punching or overt violence, which is a huge step from where Korra began, swinging as soon as she got to the city. Not to mention that she steps in not knowing 100% if she will be able to bend the spirit energy, and knowing full well that she could just die. But she does, again, believe in herself and her own power. Zaheer has helped her to relocate that strength that she previously believed he had taken away from her, and as a result, she performs a bending feat the likes of which we've never seen. Once again, she ripped a hole in space-time, creating a new spirit portal and connecting Republic City to the rest of the world in such a major way, making it a hub for spirits and humans alike, is also a fantastic action furthering balance and cooperation in the world. And Korra and her generosity alone are responsible for it. This immense demonstration of compassion to someone who a lot of the audience feel doesn't deserve it is, in my opinion, the best possible way to finalize Korra's arc. Even though she still has more to learn, as she expresses in the finale, which again, I like because we're human beings, we're never just done growing. She has come such a long way, and the show shows you how far she's come through her actions, not just what she says. It's such a beautiful resolution and one that I have always appreciated. Overall, The Legend of Korra as a show is just that. It's Korra's journey. So as a result, sure, not all of the villains are united, but they all play an integral role in shaping the woman and avatar we know and love by the end of the series. Like she says, she needed to understand what true suffering was to become more compassionate to others, even to people like Kuvira. Her development into a mature, more patient and compassionate adult was nothing short of breathtaking, and she is an excellent model for how we should write compelling and interesting protagonists that many people can relate to and draw inspiration from. Ones who have real flaws, who are not perfect, who don't always win, who are not always rewarded for their good intentions. She truly is, I believe, one of the best protagonists I've ever seen in a fantasy series, in a larger scope, even any drama series, and shows many other shows how it should be done. But anyway, if you enjoyed this video, consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/PosiTVty. That's PosiTVty, to get extra content in the form of unedited essays, and you get all these videos before they come out on YouTube. You could choose whatever you want me to see. Again, if I haven't seen it, I'll watch it for you. So support us on Patreon. But also, the support on YouTube means a ton, so thank you for subscribing, liking, commenting, all of that wonderful stuff, hitting the bell. I don't know what it does, but it does something. And I appreciate every bit of it. Seriously, I honestly can't believe that I get to do this, like, as a job. It's unreal. But thank you again, and I will see you guys for the next video, whatever you want that to be. Goodbye!